And we're live. She's Rebekah Griffith. She's Elise Cantu. I'm Jimmy McKay. We're calling this Brunch Bunch. It's like brunch my time, but it's not brunch your time, Rebekah. It's not brunch. It's breakfast, isn't it?
I have kids. The day starts early, man.
I was up at 4 o'clock this morning, and I think it's because I had some sort of animal in my attic. I thought my house was being broken into.
I had the opposite. It's a snow day here in Colorado, so I rolled out of bed a little bit late, and we have about 16 inches of snow. And spring break is starting with 1.5 feet of snow. Like, I can barely see my fence in the backyard right now.
Oh my God.
So all my kids are here, and because this is a live stream, like, my whole family's home. So who knows what might happen?
Nice. How much snow did you get in Colorado? We're getting 70 degrees in New York. This is where spring is wild, man.
Yesterday was about 60 degrees, and then it started raining. And now this morning I have about 16 inches of snow. And it's still snowing hard. Like, my trees are looking sad.
Yeah. If someone's got a question or a comment, they can drop it below. But we're going to talk about an experience Elise had. You went outside your profession. How dare you?
I know, right? Okay, so I've been going to this oncology nursing conference for a few years, and it's local. It is the local nursing chapters of this organization that get together and put together this content, and it is incredible. Not only do they bring like really good speakers, including outside of nursing, but they also this year, which I was so excited for, they really dove into like, what are some of the outside issues that affect our patient care, as far as like, not just what are these, social determinants of health or whatever, but like, how do we actually address them? So anyways, as does at a conference, we're sitting around at these round tables and you start chatting with nurses, and the conversation turned to, wouldn't it be so great? And this is coming from the nurse I sat next to. Wouldn't it be so great if we could get these patients into rehab earlier to try and prevent some of these impairments that they face? And I was so excited that this was being talked about, first of all, and that this person was talking about this with me. But I was cringing on the inside, because prospective surveillance model is exactly what this nurse was talking about and didn't know that it was a thing. And by no fault of this nurse, it just highlights how much work we have to do to really connect with, I think, some of the healthcare practitioners who can actually get patients into physical therapy, and not just in cancer rehab, but in general. And I was talking with Jimmy and Rebekah just before we hit record, and I was like, I think we need to do more with nursing rather than solely targeting physicians, which I think is a big part of it. And it's important, but like, man, what a great way to just re-emphasize some of the points that Jimmy's been making over the past month plus, of just because you said something doesn't mean that it's going to make it into clinical practice.
Well, let me ask Rebekah this. So I want you to chime in, right? So we could do 1 billion podcast episodes or live streams or create 1 million videos about this, and we could get individuals to buy in on this. But is this more of, we'd have better gas mileage, we'd have better return on investment if you can get one person who runs a hospital system to do this? Because for every one yes you get at a system, is it better to go that way? Because, not to say that people hire are better, but like they can affect more change.
Yeah, I mean, it's like asking the person who makes the decisions. And it's funny that we're having this conversation, because yesterday I went to one of the PT schools here, and we did a 3-hour class on quality improvement, because they had just gotten back from their clinicals. And so we were like, did you see any problems that could stand to be fixed while you were out on your clinicals? So one thing that I'm thinking about that you're saying, Elise, is a huge theme that those students brought back was scheduling. They couldn't get patients in for 8 to 12 weeks after an initial eval.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about your patients, and I'm like, okay, so the nurses are all on board with this, and then there's no access. So that's another issue. So when we're thinking about quality improvement, it's like a PT eval. You have to start at the beginning, do the chart review, talk to the team, take a history, like examine the entire situation before you can intervene. So I think before we can talk about solutions, Jimmy, which is what you're saying, we've got to understand the problem a little bit more, and we've got to do a deeper dive. And I posted a quote last night from Albert Einstein that said, you need to spend 55 minutes talking about the problem and 5 minutes talking about the solution. Because if you don't understand the problem, you're not going to be able to fix fix it. So I think in this case, there's so many problems. There's access to care, there's awareness of care, there's participation in care, there's financial barriers, there's social determinants of health, there's who's making the decision, all of those pieces that go into it. So I think it's a huge problem. So I think we'd have to like begin at the beginning. But to answer your question specifically, if you're trying to start a practice in the emergency department, if you don't have buy-in of the administration, it might start, but it won't last. And so you have to make that sustainable with key decision makers.
I talk a lot. So forgive me if I tell this story again. But have I ever walked you through peso before? Have you ever talked about peso?
No.
All right.
Maybe.
So I'll explain what peso is and why it makes sense in this context. So you've heard of peso, whether you know it or not. If you've watched an infomercial or listened to like a commercial for like Flex Seal, right? So peso stands for, it's an acronym, it stands for problem, agitation, solution, outcome. So a lot of times people will say, in this situation, we need physical therapists in the emergency department, or we need patients who are, cancer patients, or patients with cancer, I should say, person first, patient with cancer, to undergo rehab before cancer treatment or whatever, right? So, but that's not necessarily the problem, right? So figure out what the problem is. And like, we could workshop this right now. Elise, let's say the thing that we're solving for is to get people to understand why individuals should see someone like Elise, a physical therapist, before they go into chemo. So is that a real thing? That's a real issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. What's the problem? Like why should someone do that?
Because they will develop impairments during and after chemotherapy.
Got it. So the problem, or one of the problems that could be, is cancer is not the only problem you're going to face. So there's the problem. Agitation, it'll be harder to rehabilitate after chemotherapy if you didn't do something before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's problem, wound, agitation, salt, and then solution, make sure it's simple. I'm the onco PT. I see patients before chemotherapy to make sure. And then here comes that's the solution, outcome. People recover better, faster, and with less cost, right? So it's problem, agitation, solution, outcome. And if this sounds like an infomercial, it is, right? I mean, the cheesy example that I use all the time is I just bought a house last year, right? Yay. So the problem is, are you a new homeowner? There's so many things that you have to think about. And I'm like, yep, got it. You have my attention now. That's the problem. Agitation, water damage is something you might never know what's going on and can be costly, tens of thousands of dollars. Salt in the wound. Yeah. Oh God. Now I can feel my stomach. This is a fake thing. I don't think I have water damage right now, but I can feel it in my stomach. It's visceral. Solution. And I don't even know if this exists, but if you're a plumbing company, this would be great. You pay us $112 a year and we send someone over every quarter to check every pipe or whatever in your house. That's the solution. Outcome, never worry about water damage again. So the outcome is never worry about water damage again. The outcome is recover better, or figure out what it is. Recover better, recover faster. For hospital administrator, lower cost, but keep that standard of care. So I think you're right, Rebekah. It's going to be different for patients. The problem, agitation, solution, outcome is different for patients than it is for a hospital administrator. And this doesn't mean the hospital administrator doesn't care about patients. I think most likely they do, but they are facing different problems. They are looking at something similar from different directions. This goes back to my slide from CSM, which is if you're talking to a different audience, the first question you got to ask, whenever someone asks me, can you give a talk? Who am I talking to? Because I want to know what they care about. What problems do they have? If I'm talking about hospital level administrator problems to a group of PT students, dude, I'm missing the mark there.
Yes.
It doesn't mean their problems are better, bigger, more important, less important. It means they're different, or it could be the same problem from a different angle. But understanding that gets your message a better chance to get your message to resonate, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's the biggest piece is who are you solving this problem for? And so when people are trying to start a practice in the emergency department, they're like, well, it's better for the patients. Great. But it has to also be better for the hospital because the number of problems the number of ripples adding a whole nother thing to the workflow can cause is huge. It's just like telling my kids, like, I need you to clean up the living room because it's nicer for me when my living room is clean. Like, why do they care? So like, I have to make it specific to the audience. You have to solve everybody's problems, really. Otherwise, you might be creating whole new ones.
We do this all the time intuitively, right?
Yeah.
Use the kid example, right? I'm around enough friends with kids, but it's like the kid's not doing something that you want them to do. What's your first threat? To take something away that they like. So you understand what what their problem or agitation would be, right? But that only works so much, right?
It doesn't really.
You get it works the first couple times, right? But then people get sensitized to it, right? So that's where changing the message or changing the problem and the agitation, the solution, the outcome is imperative.
Yeah, and the solution for us is like, you can have all that stuff out somewhere else. This is the space where you can have that out. This is the space where you can make a mess. There you go. This is that space. And then that is an outcome that works for everybody.
But I could see where if you were like, hey kids, living room's messy, your stuff's all over, I have friends coming over, that's not a problem for me.
Nope.
What's the problem? Like, I don't care if your friends think your house is a mess. Like, that's not my problem. So that's why things typically go unsolved. That is a problem for you. It isn't until you understand how you can frame it as a problem for me, agitate for me. And I want to be clear, because someone made this comment before, which was like, this sounds like fear mongering. And I'm like, I want to be real clear that and maybe someone could explain it differently or why it isn't fear mongering, but like highlighting a problem and why it's a problem is not necessarily focusing on the negative, but it's focusing on the issue you're trying to solve. Right. And we are emotional beings.
Yeah.
So, and this is where I go back to, especially to people in healthcare and PT or any of the professions, because we're very fact minded, right? So I talk to PTs all the time, and when I say, why does this matter? And they immediately start to do two things. Number one, talk about themselves, and number two, talk about facts. And I'm like, you lost the audience because they don't care about you as much as they care about themselves. And you started with features, not benefits, or facts, not emotions. And it's counterintuitive, because I don't remember any classes in my prerequisites in PT school or for any science background where we talked about emotions or how to communicate features or benefits. Those weren't things. So I spotted them early. And I remember, like, because of my communications background, I remember being like, am I the only person who sees that? Turns out I was in that room, because people weren't trained for it. It wasn't their fault. But my counter is, now that I've educated you on it, now it sort of is your problem. And it's not rocket surgery to understand features versus benefits, or that look, I just gave people a formula. We love formulas in science. PESO is just one of many: problem, agitation, solution, outcome. You can run. I'd rather teach a bunch of healthcare providers how to do this instead of me going around and solving it that's not scalable.
Right.
But I think the number one skill a PT or a healthcare provider, if they could add dollar for dollar, ounce for ounce, minute invested versus reward on the back, would be communication. Now, I'm looking through that through a communication lens, so obviously there's some implicit bias there. But I would love someone to argue why that's not right, and I would love to hear that.
Well, it's interesting because we have this big push at the hospital right now about responsiveness to patients.
Like, what does that mean? What is responsiveness?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
All right. Sorry.
So when they did patient satisfaction surveys, right? Like, all these questions about the care that they were receiving. And then one thing that was consistently needed to improve was responsiveness. And that's how people respond to that patient's needs. Now, is that the amount of time from when they hit the call light to when somebody's at the bedside? No, it's the patient's experience of being responded to and cared for. So it really was based on the feedback that they got from patients, a responsiveness issue. So looking at that, how do you communicate? How do you make sure patients are heard and that they feel validated and they feel like their needs are being responded to? Because I might go into that room and I'll be like, what? Here I am, and I handle whatever I can handle. But if that patient doesn't feel like I actually responded to what they needed in that moment, it doesn't matter how quickly I got there if their experience was not of being responded to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I think that's a communications issue, because the patient may be not communicating what they need. The provider's not responding in the way that they expect. It's unfulfilled expectations.
you not giving me a clear path to communicate that is a negative experience. I don't even know where to start. I bought a vacuum cleaner a while ago and there was a problem with it. And I remember there was a warranty on it, but I went to their website. Of course, I threw the box away. Who keeps boxes?
Nobody.
Right? I don't know where the thing is. Did I fill out that warranty card? Why am I filling out that warranty card? I don't know. But that led me to a delay in even getting the thing started. So, I mean, smarter people than me have said this is that waiting list is affecting you because I'm either going to look at you and be like, that's a closed door and I'm going to leave. You're communicating, I ain't got room for you. So all these things, hotels, other service-based industries like hotels, like vacations, things like that. We could learn a ton from how they operate because they operate from a people-centered, from a customer, patient, whatever you want to call them, centered point of view. I feel like healthcare in general operates from this is our process, this is our assembly line. You get on it and you ride it to the end, and you're a passive participant in this. And then also will be angry why aren't people more active in their own care? You've shown me my role here is passiveness. I go along with what you say until I'm done.
When we had that conversation with those students yesterday about that 8 to 12 week wait, I'm like, how many of these patients do you think keep that follow-up appointment? Or do you think they've found their own solution in that meantime?
Yeah.
And let me just ask you this. Is it ethical to take a new patient if you know you can't see them again for 3 months?
No.
That's a good point.
It's especially depending on the diagnosis, right? But again, if this is prehab for chemo, no. If this is stroke recovery, absolutely not.
That happened with my dad.
No, thank you. So at what point do we just say, no, we can't take any new patients right now?
But that's not in the workflow.
I know. And then I'm thinking about those PTs too. When we were trying to break this problem down, I'm like, those PTs, can you imagine, is any of their PTO being approved? Nope. Do you think they're being asked to see patients at lunch? Yep.
Absolutely.
Do you think they have this moral conflict about the fact that they've just evaluated somebody and made an entire plan of care and then can't follow through on that?
Yeah.
There's so many pieces to access for our patients. And so when you talk about adding this prehab, we're going to send patients before, I'm like, to whom? To whom are we sending them?
Yeah. How is it talking to students? I feel like I'm far enough out of school, and I was a second career person going through PT school. I feel like I'm far enough away from students where I can now say yeah, I hope they're definitely different. I would love to know how. So what are students like today? What was the general vibe? Or what do they care? Tell me, what's the DNA swab of students today? What are we hopeful? Are we looking forward? I always assume so.
Well, it's so funny because I've been involved in 2 PT programs over the last month. One was a hybrid program and one was a traditional program. And it's actually the school that I went to school at. So yesterday was a full circle moment for me because I was helping teach in one of my first professor's classes. And she and I have never collaborated before. I've done stuff at the PT school for over a decade, but I've never been in one of her classes. I was one of her first students. So it was super fun. Wow. That was fun. But one of the things I noticed was how much more collaborative the students are. I had friends in PT school and we worked together, but these students are all in a group together and I'm coaching them through this process and they all have a Google Doc open. It's the same Google Doc and they're all working on it together. And I can see text going in, I can see text going out, I can see things moving. And I'm like, dang, now you have 8 people's perspective about what just happened in this assignment all at once. So that was super cool. Yeah. And then I also noticed when I went to the hybrid program, how much more diverse that cohort was. And I was really worried about that model, because I'm old and I'm like, no, those hybrid programs are never going to work. I'm like that person. So I'm getting involved in it to learn more about it. And so many of those students talk to me about their experience and they're like, I never would be able to go to PT school if this wasn't an option. I have 3 kids. I can't relocate. I work full time. I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so happy to be here. This never would have been an option for me. Another guy was like, I don't really do well in large group settings all of the time. So it's really nice for me to be able to do that independent, but still collaborative learning from my home by myself, because I'm a little bit of an introvert and this feels better for me. Like, there was so many things, and they knew their stuff. I was just so impressed about their thoughtfulness, the information that they had, what they were carrying forward. They were like really patient focused. So I don't know. I kind of think students right now are pretty cool.
You know what I just sort of realized is, you brought up the hybrid programs, and those maybe like 5-7 years ago is when they were sort of being more right. Am I kind of have that time frame right?
Mm-hmm.
And the overwhelming sentiment was, this is not good. This is not going to work. This is not good. It's going to be bad. And I don't have any data on it, but they're still like the programs that started are still around, and there are more programs that are like that are opening up. Again, no objective data, but I kind of just hear positive things from people who are doing it.
Yeah.
And then I look at the screen and I'm like, all three of us sort of do something that when we started it, we were probably told more often than not that that's probably not going to work, because if it was, someone would have done it already.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like that's the litmus test, is if you put forth an idea and everybody says that's a good idea, you shouldn't do it. But if people say like, that's not going to work, that if it was a good idea, someone would have done it already. That's the sign to double down. I don't know.
And we need more PTs. I mean, we really, truly do. And we need to expand the profession. We need to open the doors to the profession. We need to bring more people in. And I just am like, with this class that I was working with, the hybrid class, like thinking about the life experience in that room based on who those people were and what they'll bring to their patients. I'm like really pumped about that.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Elise, do you take students when in your clinic with you yet, or no?
Right now, I'm building my patient load, so I don't really have the ability to like offer a great learning experience. Like, it'd be like, here's a patient for the day.
Fair enough. But a year from now, you're going to be like, I need students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to manifest that.
What else is going on in your lives, Rebekah? We're working on something kind of cool for your state right now, which is kind of unique. I was explaining it to someone else, because this doesn't happen in all 50 states. So we are one country, right? We all take the same board exam, but then we have different rules in our different states.
Yeah.
And this is not a small deal. This is not a little thing that is insignificant. No. And you can sort of just say someone else will take care of it. Like, how would you briefly explain what's going on in the state of Colorado?
So in Colorado, we have a process called sunset. And what that means is when the sun sets, our license expires and we have to start all over again. So we have to submit a bill to the Colorado State Legislature that renews our Practice Act. And so that is some good, some bad. It means it opens our Practice Act so we can change it. We can move that forward. We can expand it. We can fix things that aren't working. We can modernize it. So I love that piece of it. But the other part is it's fair game. So chiropractors can come in, acupuncturists can come in, all kinds of things. So one year when we were really focusing on dry needling, we were sued by the acupuncturists, and that cost our state like $60,000 to fight that lawsuit to help maintain that in our Practice Act. So it's an opportunity for us to move forward and move back both. And so if we do have that attitude, like someone else will take care of it, you're literally leaving your entire legal scope. I'm not going to say top of scope, but your license scope up to legislators who may or may not know what you do, and the people who care more than you do about what you do. So it's a big process. It requires lots of hearings, lots of testimony, lots of bill language drafting, lots of trying to get all the PTs in the state on the same page, lots of negotiating with other parties. So we've been in negotiations with physicians and occupational therapists and chiropractors, and Lifetime Fitness is even part of this. And so it's a whole thing. So that's another communications issue, right? We need to make sure people know what's going on and how important their voice is in that process.
Well, this has come up because I've worked with some cancer organizations before, and people like to talk about awareness, right? And Awareness is communications is a tool you can use to gain awareness. At the same token, I like to ask questions at the beginning of a campaign, which is start with the end in mind. What would success look like? Do you want people to know something or do something, or know and do something, right? I'll go on a limb here and say people are aware these days of cancer, right? They are aware of it, but do you want them to know something specific? So I always like to say from the audience point of view, are you telling me something I don't know? Because if you're like, we're going to spend this money and this time and the effort to get people to understand cancer is bad, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think we might understand that. Is there something else we want them to know or do, or both? Right? So in the case of APTA Colorado, there's 4 main things that you guys are talking about. And we're going to do a live stream. Are we live streaming tonight?
Yeah.
Going live streaming. It's very complicated to live stream. I think we can handle it.
Twice in one day.
There's 4 main things you guys are talking about. One is ordering physical therapists being able to order durable medical equipment.
Prescriptive authority for durable medical equipment. Yep.
Great. So let's go through. Here's what we should do tonight too. Peso. What's the problem? Can PTs not order durable medical equipment right now?
It has to be like approved by a physician or a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant. And this is something that APTA National has been working on for a long time as well.
So that's the problem, right? Agitation is it probably adds time and money to the process.
Okay, but here's the salt in the wound. When I have to go over to a provider and say, roll later, this is how you put it in the computer, 5-inch wheels, brakes, bariatric, I have to walk them through the entire process. And they're like, what is that? It's a walker, and so they're like, okay, well, all right. They don't care. They want to get what's best for their patient, but they don't have that expertise. We have that expertise. So the fact that they're holding the keys there, I think is what slows everything down. Or from an outpatient perspective, say you have a patient who really needs an NMES after a surgery. Not because you don't want your patient spending time doing that in the clinic, but if they can do that at home, that's a thing you could add to their practice at home, but then you fax that to the physician. And then 3 weeks later, they get around to finishing that. The patient doesn't really need that anymore. Right. So it slows things down for our patients, for us. It's making the wrong providers maybe in charge of that. So I think it's going to really hopefully improve things.
So if you want to communicate this, in my opinion, and I've been working with you behind the scenes, in front of the scenes with APTA Colorado for this, I always try to so we're doing short form video with a bunch of APTA Colorado members, physical therapists. I try to get them to answer in terms of emotion, and I'm putting it on the screen. If you're looking at the video live stream, I want to make sure we touch on the emotions, the values, the benefits, right? So does it save money? Yes. So that could reduce costs. That's in the functional level on the bottom. Does it simplify, or does it avoid hassles or reduce effort? Yes. Does it also have a therapeutic value or wellness? Will that get the patient better what they need? Could you imagine if a week delay in getting the right rollator caught and then someone fall and fractured their hip?
Oh, it happens with cushions all the time.
Sure,
patients end up with wounds, or they needed a hospital bed to go home with, but they couldn't get it. And so they're now at home, but they're stuck in bed. So now they have a week more of deconditioning. They have been using a bedpan. They have a wound. Their lungs are full of fluid. They can't mobilize. I'm thinking about Elise's patient population too. If patients come into Elise and she's like, I just ordered you a bunch of DME. It's coming to your house. How much faster would that be? It would improve patient access and independence and outcomes.
And I don't want to be the guy who always points out money, but my guess is for every dollar spent over a large enough time frame, it would if it prevented one fracture, right? Because again, this isn't stopping the DME from being ordered. This is letting physical therapists order it. So maybe they're going to order the right thing versus not the right thing. So we're getting accuracy and speed. So if you get that DME, the right DME to the right patient at the right time, if it prevented one fracture a month.
Well, let's even take a step back from fracture. APTA just released those numbers on what it costs to have a fall. Right. That is a very objective monetary
Tangible
value to slap on that even before we get to fracture.
Tangible. Right. So this seems that's just the one issue. The second issue that APTA Colorado is facing. And again, hard to wrap my head around the fact that like, this is quite literally up for debate. But okay, you're still part of the process, and that's the system. So we're going to communicate. The second one is title protection. Like title protection. So if this doesn't pass, right, or if it doesn't pass, right, anybody can use the terms DPT or SPT?
Or RPT or LPT.
What are RPT and LPT?
Well, bachelor's trained PTs their credentials used to be registered PT in Colorado, like a way long time ago. So, but the point is also forward thinking. Like, we don't want them to stop doing DPT and start doing RPT, because that's just as confusing. PT is protected and physical therapist is protected, but we're also, physiotherapist will also be a protected term in Colorado.
Okay, but that is being decided quite literally by someone else, and you get a chance to whisper in their ear or send them an email or send them a phone call and communicate why that's important, right? And not just hope that they read that, because this isn't the only thing they vote on. This is one of 1,000 things that their job is requiring them to vote on.
Can you just imagine if like you went to, I don't know, you went to the gym and there were a bunch of people wearing shirts that said MD on them? Is that confusing to the public? And then that person's like, oh no, it's not medical doctor. It's mean dude.
Right.
And you're like, well, I don't know. I came to you for help. I thought you were going to help me. Oh no, I'm just a mean dude, not a medical doctor. Like, it's confusing to patients. It's also a degree that we paid a lot of money for. So I think there's that emotional piece of that as well, to want to protect what you earned.
I mean, I trust the fact that when I walk into a Walgreens or a CVS, that the medication I picked up was looked at by someone way smarter than me, right? And that I understand that. So there's understanding of what this person is trained in to do, and what buyer beware is fine until you're messing with the basic terminology of what this person is allowed to do.
And that's the point of licensure.
Correct.
So that the public knows that they're safe.
3rd out of 4 medication review. I talked about Walgreens or CVS. Why is it important for physical therapists to be able to conduct a medication review? How would that help people?
Elise, I'm going to just let you answer that question, because.
So I'm curious, what does medication review in this context?
Yeah,
like, my patient brings in, a list of their medications, and I'm going through like, okay, you're on this for this.
Yeah.
And then I'm aware of like, these are potential side effects. Like, can you define that for me, Rebekah?
Yeah, I absolutely can. So medication review, I think you and I would say is automatically part of what we do. And it matches language in the House of Delegates on the understanding and integration of medications. But right now, that's not really part of our Practice Act, that we can review medications with patients. So we want to, make sure people know that they should be doing that as part of their job. And if, say, you see a patient and they have all these medications, and then you exercise them in a way that's harmful based on those medications, that negligence and liability is on you. Right now, there's not like an avenue for patients to have recourse based on that. But also kind of thinking about laying the foundation for the physical therapist's role in medication and that whole patient, and how their body moves, how they move, what contributes to their health and livelihood. So it's really about that importance of medication review and being allowed to discuss medications with patients, because technically right now we're not really allowed to discuss those medications with patients, even though we do. Because for one, if you come to the ED and you have fallen, I need to know why. And part of that has to be a conversation about medications.
Yeah.
If your blood pressure is through the roof, and I don't ask you if you're taking something for hypertension, and then you tell me no, like, yes, I have it prescribed, but I'm not taking it. I need to be able to go that next step and find out, why aren't you taking that? And and clear up those misunderstandings and reconcile those medications with you and talk to you about them. Make sure that you cognitively understand them. How are my physical therapy outcomes going to improve if I don't reconcile and discuss your medications with you? So as a doctor of physical therapy, that to me is like the basis, the base part of what we do is understanding our patients and their physiology and their needs. So I just look to you, like, tell me how bad it is if we don't talk to our patients about that, because your patients are on all kinds of things.
A lot of medication. Yeah.
And if it's not written down, then you might be at risk for, if you did that, if it got called into question. It's sad that it's not that way, but the only way to make it that way is to make it this way. Mm-hmm. Not dislike the political process as much as you want. This is the way we make rules. So we have to go through this process.
And it's not in the Model Practice Act yet, but Colorado is moving forward with it because we want to protect our patients, and we want to also like continue to move our profession forward and the standards that we need to hold ourselves to, and the level that we should be practicing at.
And fourth out of 4 is physical therapists ordering imaging testing and perform certain wound care. So this is a situation where if you'd like to expand your scope, the way to do that is, this is step 1.
Yeah, and we have had imaging sort of indirectly for a very long time. And so the purpose of this piece of the legislation is to really spell it out, including electrodiagnostic testing, if we feel like that's something that a patient needs. So making sure that, because how it is right now in our Practice Act is we can be kind of sanctioned for doing it wrong, but it doesn't say anywhere explicitly that we can do it. So it's in there kind of quietly. And so we are modernizing this part of the Practice Act, because also it used to say that physical therapists could do this list of tests and measures. But as we know, the science evolves, the practice evolves. So now we say, appropriate evidence-based tests and measures, including diagnostics and what those might be. So trying to like solidify what we do. I also hope this will help more physical therapists in Colorado who didn't know they could order imaging now really feel comfortable doing it, because it'll be laid out.
So now this is what is at stake, right? Is losing these or not adding these to your Practice Act. Mm-hmm. So this is where a really cool, diverse team can do a lot. Because tonight we're going to do a live stream with the goal, who's our who? Physical therapist and physical therapist assistants in the state of Colorado. That's who we're talking to, because those are the people we need to know something and do something. That's why I brought this up, right? I need you to know something and do something. And what we've decided to do is a 3-pronged attack, or with the 3 things we want you to do after you know what's at stake. And Rebekah, what are those 3 things?
Write, donate, and share.
Right. So write your legislator, because I didn't assume as the communications person on this team that I knew what's the lever that I pull to get the most juice. So I went to the government affairs lobby people who this is their jam, right? I wasn't stepping in here like, move out of the way, guys. I got this. I was like, hang on. I think communications is a yes and. I'm the and. You're the yes. So I was like, do legislators actually kind of care about those letters? And they were like, yeah, they do. They look at those. I was like, great. So our job is to know and then do, which is why write is our number 1 thing. They told me that the biggest needle mover is if legislators start seeing in their inbox things with bill number this, and they hear it from a physical therapist in my community that I represent. And they're smart enough to know for every email I get, it probably means 50 or 100 people in the state feel this way, right? So they're smart enough. They understand how the game works. But even getting 10 emails written is not a simple thing to do, right? Even getting 5 people to click like on something that you create, or get something to do something, or even getting a kid to pick up 3 different things from their living room. It's not easy. So knowing and doing. The second thing is donate, and not to say that money is the thing that moves the needles, but to get products or services to further your efforts, donations are actually needed. And that was something that was important.
Well, and just like when we had that lawsuit, do you think a $60,000 lawsuit is in the budget every year? No, I mean, hopefully not.
But I would push back and say money doesn't solve everything. But what is it worth $100,000 to fix this problem? As if you lost that, is it worth that? I'm very sorry, but that is the way it worked, because you had to hire lawyers, and lawyers are very educated individuals, and they can command whatever this is. And it was a lot of work over time. So money was the second thing with donate. And then the third is simple but not easy, which is share. is we've created social media shareables and are in the process of creating more, which is if I can get one other person to know and do these things, I am amplifying my efforts. And that is sort of the way to magnify the effect, to clearly communicate the problem, the agitation, the solution, and the outcome. Listen, they just spend, I think a lot of our emails that we wrote, a lot of social media content that we created was like, listen, here's what's at stake. It takes 2 minutes. And I know that 2 minutes is valuable. I'm not trying to minimize that. Listen, I don't have 2 free minutes to rub together here. But if I knew my title in my state was at risk and I found out 3 months ago after I lost it, I would then, how many minutes would you spend or will you need to spend to get that back?
Yeah.
I want to be able to communicate that at scale because it is in fact here knocking at your door. That is a possibility and one we do not want.
And the other piece of this is like, if we get this through this time, one of the recommendations from the state board was that we not do it again for the maximum amount of time for 11 years so that we won't have to fight this battle every year.
How does this come up, or how does this work? Like you can say that you can put an expiration date on it so it's longer?
So by state law, these licenses have to sunset every so many years, and the state board recommends how often that is. So I think it's like the minimum is maybe 5 years, and then the longest is like 11 years. And so based on the recommendations that and how well that profession is professioning, the board will recommend that it needs to be reviewed more often.
Who is the board? The board of who?
So the Department of Regulatory Agencies in Colorado,
Oh.
they're the people that oversee all the licensing in Colorado for everyone.
Got
And
it.
so they do a review. When it's time for your license to come up, they make recommendations, and they are the ones that actually were like, physical therapists should be prescribing durable medical equipment. And we were like, yes, we should.
Oh.
So that was
Love
one of the
that.
official recommendations. Yep. And we also had established a state board for just physical therapy within that. So it's an appointed board that oversees physical therapy. So every time a complaint comes in, this board manages that. And one of the reasons they recommended we have such a long process this next time is they said our state board is doing exactly what they should be, and that we're regulating ourselves really well. We are handling complaints very effectively. There aren't that many. And so we are kind of self-managing really nicely. And so that's another thing. Now, after we fight this big fight, this like hurry up and fight, then we can kind of like sit back for a little bit and start imagining where we want to be in the next 10 years and start laying the groundwork for that rather than being reactive and responsive every 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what's going on now. So I feel like we talked about past, present. This is very much present because this is going on in the state of Colorado. What's going on with you guys in the future? What are things that are coming up that are of particular interest? I'll start if you can't think of anything. And not that you can't think of anything.
Oh, Elise has lots of exciting things coming up.
What do you got?
Well, we have our second annual Cancer Rehab Community Conference happening in November. So we have just started announcing our speakers, which is super exciting for that. And we've got some really special surprises coming up as far as speakers go in the next few weeks. So stay tuned.
That's awesome. I'm in the contemplation phase. Last year at CSM, not Boston, but San Diego, I did an event that I thought went over pretty well, raised some money for some charities, and had a cool party. I'll put it in different order. Had a cool party and raised some money for some charities because it was party with a purpose. The party came first, then the purpose. And we didn't do it in Boston. I just didn't have, it takes a lot of time and effort to do these things. And Boston was super expensive. CSM is in Houston. I know it's Texas, Houston, Texas. I've never been to Houston. And I'm thinking about doing Party with a Purpose, 2.0. I have a small group of people who are like, yes, let's collaborate. Because I had a very small unit last time. I will have a slightly larger unit this time because I don't like doing these things alone. I, in fact, enjoy many hands make light work. And I don't think my ideas are always the best. I like when it's, hey, here's an idea. Oh, yes. But what if we did this? Yes. And so we're thinking about what can we find in and around the conference center in Houston. Again, the formula is going to be the same. Throw a big ass party that people would want to pay $250, $300 to go to, but feel like it's worth $1,000, right? So give more value than you're asking for. How many different people can you spread that cost out over, right? To defer it, to make sure you cover the cost of the party, and then there's purpose left over. What could we do in the future? So I'm in the contemplation phase. I know we just ended CSM, but things like this, I mean, next thing you know, we'll be packing our bags again.
We'll be back.
So I'm sort of thinking about Party with a Purpose 2.0. What are your thoughts? Should I do it? Cons, pros?
I think you should do it.
I think you should too.
Full send.
I was told people won't come because CSM has these traditions where on Thursdays it's this, on Friday it's this, and you don't want to compete with other events. And my counter was, tradition does happen at CSM. Like traditionally, I don't know, if Fridays is like alumni night or Thursdays is like, section and academy night, or maybe I have the switch, but it's like, this is what happens. And my counter is, but like a lot of those events sell out. So there's no, it's like, there's no room at the inn in Bethlehem or wherever the heck, Nazareth, wherever the heck they were. Bible reference randomly from Jimmy. But there's no room at the inn for those people. So I bet you there's enough people who don't fit into those things who would go to a kick-ass party. So I wasn't trying to, my thing wasn't to step on toes. I was like, I think we got a big enough area where our feet won't ever touch if I throw a one more party at CSM.
Well, here's the thing about some of those events too. Like, I feel like I go to them and I see a lot of the same people, and I love that. It's nice. It's really nice to do that, to connect with people from across the country and like spend time with them. But at the same time, I also want to meet some new people, but I don't know where to find them or where to go to do that. And I think having this big party also allows you to come in and like just have a different experience. Also, those other things aren't usually parties. They're like mixers, and sometimes that is stressful too if I don't know anybody. And I walk in and I'm like,
so mine is party first. Mine is party first, which is like counterintuitive. It's like, no, think of the charity first. I'm like, yeah, but if nobody thinks the party's cool, no one's going to come, no one's going to sponsor it, no one's going to care. And if there isn't that, it's sort of like the same lines. It's like, think patient first. It's like, actually, no, think clinician first. Because if clinicians well, they'll take care of the patient. So I go with party first.
Jimmy, you said earlier in the episode, if everybody agrees that this is a good idea, you probably shouldn't do it. And I think the pushback that you are getting and have received on this is an indication that you need to do this, because there's people out there who, like Rebekah said, like, yeah, there's these events that are great, but there's also people who are looking for that community. And what a great way to foster that intersection, inter-academy meeting and collaboration that we all have practiced in very different areas. And we would not have met at our academy's mixer.
Well, that's
right?
the
Like,
or our alumni
magic happens.
That's the other
this
thing
is
too.
where the magic happens.
It's called combined sections meeting. And this has like been my 7th or 8th CSM. And I was like, it's awesome. But like, we do typically come together, then split up. And I was like, gosh, that's such a shame. Like, where's our Coachella, right? Where's our Lollapalooza of this event where we leave something behind, besides a bar bill? Like, I really wanted to see if we could, make change. And I think the APTA has also done that. They have an event that's like specifically for diversity, equity, and inclusion, where I think the money raised goes to scholarships, right? So like, that's a working example of, we're doing something, but what can we leave behind? The pack party is an example. Like, it's a party, but it's used to draw attention. I want you to know something and do something. Know something that if you want to get change in the national political realm, there needs to be money and there needs to be people doing it. So know something and do something. We need money to do that. So there's an easy outlet. But those parties sell out. Like, I'm not trying to take people away from those parties. There's more than enough party to go along. Party's not cake, right? The more cake I have, doesn't mean
16,000 people.
Right. So I need 1,000 of those people.
Boom.
You can have it. I'll be one of them.
All right. I have to do another appointment at 11:30. So we have to do parting shots now. What are your parting shots for today?
Wait, stop. Rebekah, what's on the future for you?
Oh, yeah, what's on the future for you?
Oh my gosh. This is going to be such an exciting year. I have 3 2-day courses booked to help people start a thriving PT practice in the emergency department. But if you were at all interested in that conversation about QI If you come to this class, you're going to learn so much about QI because that's the framework. So even if you don't practice in the ED, you can take this back with you. There's also a lot about mindset, and I'm super excited. So 3 of those. And I'm also going to have a big conference this year, and I'm so excited about it because I went to Elise's conference last year, and I was like, you talk about like value. Like I was moved, I was touched, and I was inspired. And I was like, this needs to happen in different settings. And so we're going to call it the Top of Scope Summit. And the theme this year is Practice Essentials. I have 19 speakers confirmed. Wow. First day is Practice Essentials. Second day is People Essentials, like how to actually manage different conditions. Nice. And I mean, when you talk, Jimmy, about like just doing something, I was really nervous to do this. And I reached out to these 19 people. Every single one of them said yes, because other people want to do these things too. And so everyone said yes. It's going to be the coolest thing. I'm so excited about it. It's going to be virtual, so anybody can come. And that'll be in October. And I can't wait. Like, I'm so excited to share all of this information with people so that they can just feel great, be great. And it's like going to be short, which is perfect for people who work in the ED because our attention spans are mildly limited.
Yeah. Make good work well known.
Yes. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah. When can it, well, we'll share information as it becomes available, or when people can get on a mailing list or make sure they can.
It's on the website. You can register now.
And say the name of the website.
Oh, I always forget that part. It's like that like last part of like sharing things. It's www.theeddpt.com under our continuing education tab. And if you need some vestibular education, our next course is coming up in April 6th. So register.
You don't have to say www anymore. Everybody knows that.
I know, but I like to. I feel like I'm on an infomercial and I'm that person that's like www.
No.
It's fun. Man, I like it. It makes me feel like one of those 80s infomercials.
It's very 2000.
It's cringe. I get it. I hear you.
It's very 2000 and late. All right, parting shots. Elise, what do you got for your parting shot? I think it was that funny. What is your parting shot? Keep it together.
Oh my God. You know, if someone doesn't like your idea, do it anyways.
Yeah.
I love that. I think my parting shot is that when you see a problem around you, don't wait for somebody else to fix it. Like, start taking action. Even if you're not doing it the right way or the perfect way or whatever, just go.
Yeah. I would say this is someone else's quote. I'm good with quotes, bad with who said it, which is when it feels scary to jump, that's actually the right time to jump. So I'm feeling that itch again. Like maybe it is time to do Party with a Purpose too, or maybe it is time to do something with a massive change. Ladies, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.